We, as an EL community, as an EL movement, have many things we can be proud of, but there is nothing greater than what you will see and hear from these students. It is my incredible honor to present to you our 2014 Expeditionary Learning Student Keynote Speakers from Casco Bay High.
Hurricane Sandy crashing on shore, winds now at 90 miles per hour, and this storm is so big, so vast.
This storm is basically one of the largest we've ever seen in the Atlantic Basin.
There were 117 Hurricane Sandy-related deaths in the United States. On October 30th, the day after the storm, 7.9 million businesses and households were without electric power. At least 110 homes burned to the ground in the Breezy Point neighborhood of Rockaway, New York.
This is the Aqua House, and that's the Bayview restaurant over there. They were both destroyed during Hurricane Sandy. They were wiped out. I mean, big time. We had half the train bridge in this building. It's build it back. We're waiting a year and a half now, and everybody's pretty much running out of money in the area.
The thoughts that were in my head is, what if the fire spreads? What if our house burns down? What if we lose everything that we have right now? It was really scary, honestly. Those are my friends and stuff.
You know, I owned the house. I had no mortgage, and now I'll have a mortgage till I'm 85.
You know, I have students that come to school. So I wanted to make them safe, comfortable, and make sure everything was taken care of for them.
Approximately 85% of Channelview students live in the affected areas of Rockaway. The school's boilers were destroyed, creating hazmat conditions and forcing the school to relocate for 2 months. 40% of the school community was displaced, some for a few days, and some are still not home.
How many people were affected by Hurricane Sandy?
Since the storm, the community has grown closer, honestly. Like, people that would never help each other out are now helping each other out.
Good morning, Expeditionary Learning Nation. Today, we hope to share with you the stories of how our lives as juniors at Casco Bay High School in Portland, Maine, intersected with the vital stories of our peers in another expeditionary learning school hundreds of miles away in Rockaway, New York. We feel so privileged to be here today, addressing some of Earth's best educators. We are also proud to represent the student voice, because we know you and your students are engaged in similar work across the country. Hello, my name is Zahara Mondet.
And I'm Sebastian Andrew.
And I'm Gishim Naipir.
And I'm Renata Sirio. We are seniors at Casco Bay High School in Portland, Maine.
Like many of our expeditions, it all started with a question from our team of teachers. What impact will you have as a generation? We are often told we have the power, but can young people actually affect change? And what does it take? That's the big question.
That is the big question. In fact, it looms larger and larger.
Our faculty challenged us first with the issue of climate change, arguing that it is one of the most vital issues of our day, one that will become our responsibility. We didn't know what to think at first.
I never believed that I could make an impact on the environment.
I mean, I just thought of polar bears floating on ice caps.
There was clearly a lot more for us to know and learn about the science of fossil fuels and our climate. In chemistry class, we launched the expedition, The Air Up There, where we studied what the air is made up of and the impact greenhouse gases are having on the atmosphere. Each student was given an atmospheric gas to investigate, such as nitrogen, hydrogen, and the nefarious carbon dioxide.
Based on our research, we each created an educational poster explaining the compound's role in the atmosphere. My poster highlights stratospheric ozone, which is a compound that creates a shield around Earth and protects us from harmful ultraviolet radiation. Unfortunately, because of man-made chemicals such as chlorofluorocarbons, this protective layer of ozone has been eroded.
Once we had acquired the background knowledge on greenhouse gases, we started exploring what it actually meant to make change through legislation. We immersed ourselves in public policy and sought deeper insight into creating change both locally and federally. We each chose a policy topic addressing the question, how do we resolve our dependence on fossil fuels? For our culmination, we hosted a public symposium at the Portland Public Library, where we each presented and defended a proposal to a panel of experts. Preparing for this became a process which ignited our individual passions. We developed a range of proposals.
The federal government should shorten the permitting process to better promote the use of tidal power.
The federal government should better promote hybrid and electric cars by creating more financial incentives.
The Maine state government should integrate Meatless Mondays into the public school system in order to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions.
And the federal government should more strictly regulate coal emissions in existing power plants and invest in more renewable sources of energy. We inevitably ran into obstacles in our research. Oftentimes, it was restrictions in the legislation or the end of an important thread of ideas that taught us the complexities of the legal reality. This toilsome part of the expedition, up late researching, taking notes, writing, is what I would call the irregular sleep pattern phase.
Yep.
But if anything, this period of struggle resulted in one steep learning curve, which then also gave us inspiration. A reporter from Maine Public Radio covered our work.
But instead of feeling paralyzed and depressed about the magnitude of the threat, students at Casco Bay High School have been learning about steps they can take and policies they can promote in the face of more heat waves, floods, and rising sea levels. In February, the junior class presented their individual research projects on the topic to a panel of experts who peppered them with questions.
What specifically should we be doing in Maine to promote local foods?
I think
give me three specifics that you would say.
Noah Libby's task was to convince the panelists of the importance of promoting local agriculture.
Subsidizing the farmers, promoting farmers markets.
Other students argued for creation of a new federal agency to deal with natural disasters and for regulations around fracking and natural gas.
I study the promotion of hydroelectric vehicles. I used to think just producing more of these cars was the solution. But if you're going to develop a real solution, you have to address questions like, where would the car recharge and how can we make them more affordable? I began looking closely at the existing incentives for people to own these vehicles, like free parking and free carpooling lane.
Palms sweating, stomach lurching, I stood in front of a panel of adults with 4 times the credentials and schooling as I, including a beef farmer, and presented my proposal about Meatless Mondays. Feeling on the verge of tears, I explained to them that ever since the Industrial Revolution, the number of farms in the United States has been getting smaller and smaller. And the size of these remaining farms has grown larger and larger. Because of this concentrated animal feeding operation, or CAFO effect, livestock farming in the United States has become the 3rd largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions by sector. It is responsible for 18% of all greenhouse gas emissions, including 65% of nitrous oxide emissions and 37% of methane emissions in the United States alone. By the end of my presentation, I realized that not only had I presented and defended my proposal, but these people agreed with me. Never before had I felt more like an adult.
But the most nerve-wracking part of it all, I remember, was the questioning. Our presentations were to a panel of legislators and experts in environmental fields who peppered us with questions, challenging our research and our thinking. If you could get through them, then you were all right.
Hey, I remember watching you present in Culmination Day. You had those 3 panelists who just kept going at you.
Oh, I know. It was horrifying.
Well, Sebastian, you've proposed federal-level regulation. Why not implement reform at the state level?
Yes. What role can the state play?
Well, the states technically have the implementation rights for the power plants. It's the federal government's responsibility, I believe, to set the national guidelines and guide these states in reforming their power plants. You see, without federally mandated regulations, the states will feel powerless over amending the pollution standards.
Oh, I see.
After all that hard work, we had educated ourselves and become experts. But had we actually created change? Too often, Congress does not enact policy. So we decided that we needed to show the world the effect climate change has on people's lives, as seen in the devastation of Hurricane Sandy in Rockaway, New York. We launched our documentary expedition, The Eye of the Storm, in hope of raising awareness. We started by creating documentary teams of 4 students. We then dove into the exploration of what makes a quality documentary. This consisted of various workshops with experts from the SALT Institute in the areas of video, photography, sound, and interview. With our newly found skills, we prepared to head to the Rockaways in New York.
New York, Times Square, woohoo! Each year, Casco Bay runs something we call Junior Journey. So last April, we traveled as an entire class of 69 students to Rockaway. But first, we had to raise money, a lot of money. Each crew did a fundraiser, each person paid a fee, and we wrote grants. Some of us made presentations to potential founders. Thankfully, we found that many wanted to partner with us and support us, from insurance company Unum to Learners Foundation.
Fortunately for us, we also found a great school to partner with, Channelview School for Research, an expeditionary learning school in Rockaway that was devastated by Hurricane Sandy. Eventually we packed, we shuffled our duffels, and then we boarded the bus. Channelview took us in. They shared their school, their neighborhood, and their stories with us. As a class, we interviewed 9 students, 6 staff, and 2 local business owners. We each spent 2.5 days doing service work to assist with the reconstruction of people's homes. The other 2 full days were spent interviewing, filming, and recording in the neighborhood.
It's been an eye-opening and sometimes painful experience for these high school juniors from Portland, Maine, who are shooting a documentary about the devastation Sandy left behind in the Rockaways.
It's actually really surprisingly emotional.
The goal is for the students to experience the effects of the storm firsthand as part of their investigation project on the environmental effects of fossil fuel dependency and climate change. Over 5 days, the juniors from Casco Bay High School are interviewing people like Dan Tuberty, whose bar was completely flooded by Sandy.
We secured the building in that immediate aftermath.
We read books about literature that could be about this and find themes and stuff. But it's really hard to understand and grasp it as not just this cliche until you really see it in action.
When we really come down here and talk to the people and see the damage and see how high the water was, like the water lines, when I see that kind of thing, it really connects me to it.
Their teacher, Susan McCrae, says she hopes the documentary will show the students how they can help affect change through the power of storytelling.
Yesterday, I had a kid come out of an interview on the verge of tears saying, I've never experienced anything like that. So I sat across the table from someone and I listened in a way I never have before, and it was real.
Channelview High School is hosting the students. It was closed for several months after Sandy. Teachers there say participating in this documentary has helped in their students' healing process.
They haven't wanted to talk about it, so it's been a great way for them to tell their story.
The students aren't just filming their documentary during the trip, they're also helping to rebuild several Sandy-damaged homes.
I'm just really happy to be here. I'm honored that people have welcomed us and been so friendly.
The students are screening the documentary in Portland on June 17th. In the Rockaways, Tamani Woolley, New York 1.
The owner of the home that I worked on told us the night of the storm, she had to literally swim out the back door. When she finally returned, her entire house was destroyed. My job was to put up the drywall in the bathroom. Measuring and refilling was a long process. So when it was time to go, I asked if I could stay and finish the project. Even if I felt tired, I felt amazingly light that my two hands have put on walls for someone without a home.
Sebastian and I interviewed Khalil, a senior at Channelview High School. When it was time for our first interview, our team drove from the school to Khalil's house, down a road that was more like a lake. When we were finally standing outside of Khalil's house, as a team of students alone, I told Sebastian to check that his sound recorder was on. We were all a bit frozen, and then we looked at each other, and I found myself saying, "We are about to go in and do this. This is our one chance to get a beautiful story." I realized that the past few months of preparation had all led up to this very moment.
We spent 2 full amazing days with Khalil, meeting his family and following his life.
Then it was time to return to Maine.
Once we were back in English class, it took weeks to compile all the data we had into our written oral histories. From there, each team worked to create a 3-minute multimedia documentary. I had never done anything so academically rigorous, demanding research, reading sophisticated texts, writing and revising and revising, and revising.
For Zahara and me, after 2 full days with Khalil, we had hours of footage, hours of sound recordings, and thousands of photos. How could we turn all this into just a 3-minute video? First, we had to identify what the story was really about, and we had to work this through as a 4-person team.
And ultimately, the story that we were trying to reveal about Khalil is that he was helping combat his time during the storm by actively participating in the Rockaway Youth Task Force. For example, take a look at this clip.
I don't want to say it was no hope, but it was like, what's the point? Like, if we don't have nowhere to live, like everything is like messed up. But then kind of like going back and forth to the Rockaway, volunteering with the Rockaway Youth Task Force, kind of really played a huge role in pulling me out of that stint.
Yeah, and wait, didn't we actually agree that the essence was really about Khalil's role in the family? That he was seen as the strong male character and father figure in his family? I mean, look at this.
It was like we needed each other more because we were also closer. So like with the hotel and the college that we were staying in, we were closer, literally, like sleeping closer as well.
No, it's clearly about how the task force empowered him. I mean, it wasn't his family that helped him through the storm, was it?
Yeah, okay, but we wouldn't have filmed all those clips about his family life if we hadn't intended them to be the central point.
Well, I just feel, and this is just based off how we made the documentary, that the task force is the key.
I mean, it's not.
Sebastian, you're so close-minded.
I'm close-minded? I work so hard to try and incorporate everyone's ideas. You're the stubborn one.
Guys. We have, 1,200 people watching us. We should get back to the presentation.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, essentially, that's what happened. But don't worry, we worked it out. And we learned that collaboration isn't always easy, but it is rewarding.
With my team, I created a documentary about Yvonne Brown. Her family was forced to leave their home, and they had to escape through a window. Interviewing her, the whole experience felt like meeting up with an old friend. This work opened my eyes. I realized what people go through in the past helped them become the people they are today.
I'm a bit uptight about grades. Whenever an expedition comes along, I usually spend more time analyzing the rubric for how I can exceed than thinking about how innovative I can make my project. But then we went to New York, and I met Catherine Petrello, a music teacher. When I asked if she had a song to share, I expected no more than chopsticks. When she told us she had a song to share about the hurricane, I was so excited. And then she sang. Don't let the Lord
They say bad things come in threes, and this is certainly the case for Catherine Petrello. 11 days before Sandy made landfall, her father-in-law and pastor of her church passed away after his cancer came out of remission. Then, 8 days after this, her husband Gary burned 30% of his body when working on a house in upstate New York. Ms. Petrello and her mother-in-law rushed upstate to the burn unit to be with him. 3 days later, on the same day Gary was scheduled to go into surgery, Sandy hit. Separated from her family, she used a mix of news and phone calls to keep in touch with her loved ones in the Rockaways.
After getting one of those phone calls, like just falling to the floor in the hallway of the hospital and thinking to myself, okay, God, you need to get this because I can't do this. I think that was probably the scariest moment. It's like not knowing what you have to come home to.
She sang, and my entire project became about sharing with the world the beauty, passion, and amazing voice that you just heard. I worked in that documentary for 2 months nonstop. It needed to be perfect. Not for me, not for the grade, but for her. When I received my report, I was surprised to find a grade. A good grade, way better than I could have done with just a classroom rubric. This expedition helped me see that school doesn't just have to be about building my perfect transcript for college. It can be about using learning to have a real impact on people's lives.
June 10th was the night of our culmination. This event, the screening of our hour-and-a-half film, was made even more special when we discovered that many of the Channelview kids that we worked with and interviewed would be coming all the way to Maine to be with us, including Khalil. The video that you saw at the beginning of our presentation was the opening of our film, and it was made by members of our senior class. Next, we have a final piece about Shadea, another student who was interviewed. Shadea also came to Maine and was in the audience that night.
Shadea. Shadea. I've been in New York for 11 years. I was born in Jamaica. I live with my father and my stepmother. I play a lot of sports. I'm very active. I play lacrosse, run track, and I play soccer. When Sandy happened, I was in my soccer season. We made playoffs, but our field was messed up, so it was a struggle at the time. And a year later, we still don't have a field. We had to practice on the softball field. People thought, yeah, it's going to be a big storm, a lot of rain. Actually, there was no rain, which is the weird part. It was scary. We just started watching a movie. All of a sudden, we hear water coming in. So they're like, we have to get out of here, we have to get out of here, because we look outside and it's terrible. It's really bad. The force of the water brought up the furniture, and the furniture blocked the doors. So it couldn't open the door anymore. We actually had to escape through the window. The window in our computer room is high. It's really high. So my dad helped us up through the window. Like, all of me was wet. And then we went up the stairs. Like, we live by a boatyard. One of their boats, a really huge boat, from sailing past our house. So my dad is like, yo, what if we end up filling the whole house? What are we gonna do? So he grabs the tie of it, because that's what we was about to take. If we had to escape, we were gonna go on the boat. There was no electricity, no heat, no anything. So it was starting to get irritating, uncomfortable, because it's not what we used to. We had to listen to radios now for months. Clothes, TV, both laptops, desktop, gone, everything. We actually had to leave our house because the mold started to build up. So it was unsafe to live there anymore, so we had to leave for 7 months. Yeah, a lot of people had to leave. A lot of people didn't come back. You know, people didn't come back. We went through hardship in Sandy, starting all over again. There's nothing we could do. You know, Sandy, it happened. People are still going through it. With me, I always try to put optimistic to everything. It was like a new beginning. And it really was. Our house is completely different from where it was before. I like it better. So it took us a whole year for them to fix up the house. Our house was I love it. So it's a new beginning for me. I will never forget that day. For the rest of my life, I will never forget that night.
I will never forget seeing the eager but anxious faces of my peers as our documentaries came up on screen. By then, we knew every word. I still remember seeing a Channel View student write to my friend, informing him that his documentary made her cry, and that it was perfect. Getting the Channel View stamp of approval made all the difference.
And we close the evening and our year with Channel View students in Casco Bay in one chorus, singing the song Coming Together. It is a song that Channel View has written in response to the storm. It is a song that you will soon hear of strength and community.
This was CBHS's 7th junior journey, and this year's juniors are returning to the Rockaways. Even though the nation has turned its attention elsewhere, there is more work to be done. Junior Journey has evolved significantly over the years. CBHS juniors have also traveled to Appalachia and to Mississippi. The experiences vary, but there are always public policy proposals that legislators need to hear, service work that helps a life, and stories that can inspire hope.
I'm continually realizing how much I wish to be treated like an adult, but not have to make decisions like one. The real world is terrifying, and with billions of people in it, how can I even make a dent? But I've learned that just through sharing a story or advocating for an idea I'm passionate about, small changes can be made. The fact that our school took a group of 70 kids, put the world in our hands saying, "Here, take this. It's your responsibility now," is amazing. The fact that it didn't scare us, it inspired us, and actually inspired real change is even more amazing.
This was an eye-opening experience about how others live and how beautiful it is to immerse yourself into a completely new culture. I fell in love with these people. I saw how people push through struggles with music, community, love, or passion. It was meaningful for each and every one of us to tell a story for someone who wouldn't have the chance to tell their story, a story that totally deserves to be told. Having to sit and listen to someone so closely, I realized that when you listen, people will open themselves to you, and that everyone has a story.
As a young adult, I had many questions. What is the purpose of life? What is the ultimate deed? How do we find happiness, and how can we make the people around us happy as well? I feel that I'm on a journey, and these expeditions have helped me see myself in a new way. After years of being told I could be a leader, I now began to hold myself up to higher expectation, to always lend a helping hand to those in need. I have seen many of my childhood friends choose the wrong pathway to find their happiness, to feel a sense of belonging. This moment on stage is a turning point for me, because I realize the work I put in today affects the life that I live tomorrow. I'm also beginning to understand the impact I could have on someone. And as a generation, we are looked down upon by society. We don't have anything significant to point to or say, our generation did that. We have to step up.
To be honest, as we rode the bus to the Rockaways, I hadn't anticipated even a minuscule amount of what we would be able to achieve only 2 months later. I can't tell you what every person on June 10th was thinking, but I can remember for sure what I felt that night. The feeling of raw pride in watching the people I probably know best, my classmates, blow my mind completely, right out the chimney. It was one of those moments when you simply just have to glance around behind your seat and make eye contact, sharing in some indescribable collective spirit. I realized that not only had I been searching for the humanity in the lives of these affected people, but that I had this soft spot too. We all do. And so today, we stand on this stage to raise climate awareness to an even larger audience, to move a larger audience to see the beauty and resilience in these stories, and to say yes, young people can change the world.
Storm has passed, we open our eyes, and all we hear are cries of why. All is lost, hope is gone, we find it hard to be strong.
Tenacity.
Faith. Support.
Honesty. Ambition.
Aspiration.
Family.
Cohesion.
Empowerment.
Respect. Courage.
Loyalty.
Communication.
Empathy.
Determination. Affection.
Ingenuity.
It takes guts.
Spirit.
Audacity.
And passion.
And so, EL Nation and the class of 2015, what does it take to affect change in the world?
A generation